Greetings and welcome to another episode on Promotion Exam Study Made Easy, where we simplify the method of studying. So instead of stressing your eyes reading through book all day, you just be on your comfortable zone, you play and listen. So this is the revised public service rules, which we have been considering for a while now. So the revised public service rule that took effect in the year 2023. So the approval to review the public service rule was given in September 2021. So in September 2021, approval was given by FEC to review the public service rule. And after the review, on July 27th of the year 2023, the reviewed version came into existence. It came into being. It took effect. The use took effect on 27th of July 2023. So while the approval was given 2021 September, so it was launched and became effective in the year 2023. So in this particular episode, we shall be considering the key changes in the 2021 revised public service rules. So we shall be looking at the key changes in the revised public service rule. And also, we shall also be looking at petitions and appeals. Petitions and appeals. So previously in our topics, we considered general definitions, appointments, and under appointment, we had 3 episodes that covered everything on appointment. Then we proceeded to discipline, and we had 2 episodes that discipline, everything on discipline. Then we also treated leave, and our last video was on performance management system. So as I said earlier, in this particular video, we shall be looking at the key changes in the revised public service rule, then petitions and appeal. Then under petitions and appeal, we shall be looking at appeal or petition general, and then appeal or petition rules. So remember, please, all that we do here is as contained in the revised public service rule, which got permission for the approval, which got approval for the review in September 2021 and launched in July 27th, 2023. But before we proceed further, please, if you are coming across this video for the very first time, or you are a returning viewer but have not subscribed, kindly look around your screen. If you must see anywhere written subscribe, it can come in white background or black background or any background. Kindly click on it. Click on it. The essence of it is for you to be getting our materials in real time. As soon as we make any upload, and even the previously uploaded ones, YouTube will be able to make them available to your page, and you have them. It's free of charge, and you are not also paying a dime for subscribing. Is to enable you get the materials. So if you are preparing for your promotion exam, or you are seeking for entry into public service, this is a wonderful material for you. You will not like to miss it. So that is the essence of subscribing. It doesn't cost you anything. So looking at the key changes in the revised public service rules, so we have the performance management system, the PMS. So the previously used annual performance evaluation report APA system has been replaced with a robust performance management system called PMS, emphasizing efficiency, effectiveness, and a result-oriented service delivery. The new system involves continuous assessment, setting targets, quarterly appraisals, and continuous training. Then we also have paternity leave. Paternity leave was also introduced. So a new provision grants a 14 working days paternity leave for male officers to bond with their newborn babies, or for the official adoption of a baby not more than 4 months old. This leave can be accessed a maximum of 4 times during an officer's service, and not more than once every 2 years. That is the paternity leave. Then we also have the annual leave calculation. So the annual leave calculation is now calculated based on working days instead of the normal calendar days. So previously used. So it is now based on working days to calculate the annual leave. Then we now also have the tenure system restoration. So the restoration of the tenure system for the directors and permanent secretaries. So the 8-year tenure for the office of directors and permanent secretaries has been restored. Then we also have the short-term appointments. So the rules now include provisions for various short-term appointments, such as volunteerism, internship, talent sourcing, and sabbatical leave, to inject fresh talent and expertise into the service. Then we also have adaptation to modern work. Of course, this was caused by COVID-19. So the revised rules acknowledge and provide guidelines for emerging issues and modern work practices, including visual meetings or engagements and working from home, which were influenced by the COVID-19 pandemic experience. Then we also have the abolition of notional promotion. Notional promotion also being abolished. So the notional promotion, so promotion without the officer being physically present for the interview or exam due to leave of absence or any other thing, has been abolished. So eligible candidates now must now make themselves available for the promotion interview at designated centers. Then we also have the prohibition of unpaid staff. So the employment of unpaid staff is explicitly prohibited. Then we also have inclusion of persons with disability. So 5% of all recruitment in the service shall be reserved for persons with disabilities. So 5% of all recruitments in the service shall be reserved for persons with disability. And then we have the number 10 change. Number 10 one as inclusion of a chapter on training. So the inclusion of a chapter on training. So a dedicated chapter on training has been added, highlighting the emphasis on staff development. So those are the changes in the revised public service rule. And then the reason for the revision is aimed to update the service with current trends, promote transparency, enhance performance, and improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the public service. So the revision is aimed to update the service with current trends, promote transparency, enhance performance, and improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the public service. So from there we proceed to petitions and appeals. So definition. An appeal is a formal request made by an aggrieved officer for reconsideration of the decision of an appropriate authority. So while petition is a formal complaint made by an officer on an appropriate authority for consideration of a matter affecting the officer personally or bordering on general or public interest. Please note the difference between the two, appeal and petition. So while appeal is a formal request, so made by an aggrieved officer for reconsideration of a decision that has been taken, a petition is a complaint. Is a complaint by the officer for consideration of a matter affecting the officer personally or bordering on general public interest. So procedure. Every officer who has any representation of a public or private nature to make to the government should address them to A. So the chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission, in respect of matters relating to appointment, including acting appointment, promotion, transfer, and discipline. Or you should address them to the head of the Civil Service of the Federation on matters relating to other conditions of service, such as leave, passages, allowances, pension, gratuities, and others. So for for appointment, promotion, discipline is to the chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission, while for the condition of service is to the head of the Civil Service of the Federation. Then we also have to the head of MDAs or head of government on issues bordering mostly on general or public interest. Then we now have petition to head of government. Any officer in the Federal Public Service may address the head of government, in which case he must transmit such communication unsealed and in triplicate to any of the channels mentioned in the preceding rule, requesting that the petition be forwarded in due course to the head of government. Every letter or document which may be received by the head of government otherwise than through the proper channel will be returned to the writer. The rule requiring transmission of communications to the head of government through appropriate channel is based on the strongest grounds of public convenience, in order that all communications may be duly verified as well as reported on or before they reach the head of government. It extends therefore to communications relating to public affairs as well as the concerns of the writer. So we now have the timing. So an appeal from an aggrieved officer shall be handled and concluded within 6 months. So 6 months is the time limit for the appeal to be considered and handled and concluded within 6 months. Then 2, without prejudice to their constitutional rights, officers should as much as possible exhaust all avenues provided in the public service rules and circulars for redress before proceeding to courts. This is also in addition to obtaining the permission of the head of the Civil Service of the Federation before proceeding to court. Then we have applications. Appeal or petition by an officer or by an ex-officer on matters relating to his conditions of employment as an officer or his condition as a pensioner of government must be submitted in accordance with the rules set out in this session. Then we have outside influence. In line with the public service rule, an officer must not attempt to bring political or other outside influence to support his individual claims. If he is dissatisfied, the proper course is to make presentation to his immediate superior officer or permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office. If his representations are not successful, it is open to him to submit a formal appeal or petition to the appropriate authority under the public service rule. The routing of petition. An appeal or petition must be submitted through the proper departmental channels, namely through the petitioner's immediate superior officer and the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office, who will forward the appeal or petition with his comments and recommendations to the chairman of the Federal Civil Service Commission or head of the Civil Service of the Federation, in accordance with administrative instructions in force at the time. It is in the petitioner's interest that the above-mentioned rule concerning the routing of an appeal or petition shall be strictly observed, in order that the petition will be duly verified and reported on before it reaches the final destination. The number of copies. An appeal or petition addressed to any of the channels mentioned in the preceding rule must be submitted in duplicate, and an advance copy may be sent direct to the appropriate authority with evidence that he has submitted through the channel stated in the public service rule. In either case, one copy will be retained by the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office. Then identity of petitioner. An appeal or petition must bear the full name, staff number, signature, and address of the petitioner. When written by a person other than the appellant or petitioner, the signature and address of the writer must be included. Then petition submitted on behalf of an illiterate person. When a person submits an appeal or petition above his own signature on behalf of an illiterate, the petition shall contain a statement that he has been asked to write on behalf of the illiterate. Then disqualifications. So what will make the appeal or petition attained? So A, an appeal or petition will not be entertained if it A, does not comply with the public service rule. B, if it deals with a case in which legal action is pending in a court of law. So if legal action is already pending in the court of law on that particular case, it will not be entertained. Then 3, if it is illegible or meaningless. So if it is illegible or meaningless. Then we have 4, if it is worded in abusive, improper, or foul language. Then 5, if it merely repeats the substance of a previous petition without introducing new relevant matters. So these are cases where an appeal will be disqualified and not entertained. Then we now have delay to be explained. So an appeal or petition submitted more than 6 months after the decision complained of has been given will also not be entertained unless such delay is supported by valid reasons. Then conclusion of petitions. An appeal or petition shall conclude by precisely the nature of the redress sought, and a petition which exceeds in length 2 pages of foolscap must also include a summary of the reasons adduced in support of the redress sought. So when it exceeds 2 pages, so there must be a summary of the reasons adduced in support of the redress sought. So that is that. So going forward to always try to attempt every question before you see the correct answer. Attempt every question. You guys need to evaluate yourself so before you see the correct answer. So question 1, what is an appeal? A, is a formal complaint made by an officer to an appropriate authority for consideration of a matter affecting the officer personally or bordering on general or public interest. B, is a formal request made by an aggrieved officer for reconsideration of the decision of an appropriate authority. Then C, is a formal presentation made by a favored officer for expression of gratitude on matter that concerns him. And then D, is a formal publication made by an officer on matters that concerns him. So note your answer. Question 2. Any representation by officer on matters relating to appointment, including acting appointment, promotion, transfer, discipline, either of public or private nature, should be addressed to. So where should it be addressed to? On matters concerning promotion, transfer, appointment, discipline. A, the head of MDAs or head of government. B, the head of the civil service of the federation. C, the secretary general of the federation. And D, the chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission. So quickly looking at the correct answer. So for question 1 that says, what is an appeal? And of course, an appeal is a formal request. That is option B. It's a formal request made by an aggrieved officer for reconsideration of the decision of an appropriate authority. Then for question 2, any representation by officer on matters relating to appointment, including acting appointment, promotion, transfer, and discipline, then shall be addressed to the chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission. That is option D. Question 3, define petition. A, is a formal complaint made by an officer to an appropriate authority for consideration of a matter affecting the officer personally or bordering on general or public interest. B. Is a formal publication made by an officer on matters that concerns him for possible intervention. C. Is a request made by an aggrieved officer for reconsideration of the decision of an appropriate authority. And then D. Is a formal letter to court of competent jurisdiction on an established case concerning the government. So note your answer. Question 4. Representation by officer on issues bordering mostly on general public interest should be addressed to A. Permanent Secretary or Head of Extra Ministerial Office. B. The Head of the Civil Service of the Federation. C. The Head of MDAs or Head of Government. And then D. The Chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission. Looking at the correct answers, so for question 3, that said define petition. Of course, petition is a complaint, so it's a formal complaint made by an officer to an appropriate authority for consideration of a matter affecting the officer personally or interest. That is option A. Round 4 says representation by officer on issues bordering mostly on general public interest should be addressed to the head of MDAs or head of government. Question 5. Any representation by officer on matters relating to other conditions of service, such as leave, passage, allowances, pensions, gratuities, other than appointment, promotion, transfer, and discipline, either of public or private nature, should be addressed to A. Permanent Secretary or Head of Extra Ministerial Office. B. Head of the Civil Service of the Federation. C. The Head of MDAs or Head of Government. And D. The Chairman, Federal Civil Service Commission. Question 6. What shall be the form of transmitting communication? That should be transmitting of communication by officer in the Federal Public Service government. So what shall be the form of transmitting communication by officer in the Federal Civil Service to the head of government? A. It shall be unsealed and in triplicate through the right channels, requesting that the petition be forwarded in due course to the head of government. B. It shall be entered and in triplicate through the right channels, requesting that the petition be forwarded in due course to the head of government. And then C. It shall be unsealed and transmitted through the right channels, requesting that the petition be forwarded in due course to the head of government. And then D. It shall triplicate through the right channels, requesting that the petition be forwarded in due course to the. So going back to the right answer. So for question 1, of course, any representation by an officer on matters relating to conditions of service. Once it's conditions of service, it has to go to the head of civil service of the Federation. That is option B. So then for question 6, I say what shall be the form of transmitting communication by officer in the Federal Public Service to the head of government. Of course, it shall be transmitted unsealed and in triplicate. So the communication shall be unsealed and in triplicate through the right channels, requesting that the petition be forwarded in due course to the head of government. Question 7. On what condition shall the letter or document received by head of government be returned to the writer? So what will be the condition to return the document to the writer? A. If it is not transmitted through the proper channel. B. If the government did not find the letter fit. C. If the officer has had previous case. And D. If the officer has another pending case in court. Then 8. What is required of an aggrieved officer before he can proceed to court? A. He is required to first publish his grievances and seek for public opinion before proceeding to court. B. He is required to notify the head of service of his intention to go to court. C. he needs to exhaust all avenues provided in the public service rules and circulars for redress, and also obtain the permission of the head of the civil service of the Federation before proceeding to court. And then D, he is required to first seek for intervention of the office of the head of state before proceeding to court. So the correct options for question 7 that says, on what conditions shall the letter or document received by the head of government be returned? Of course, if it is not properly routed. So that is, if it is not transmitted through the proper channel, it will be returned to the writer. And for question 8, that says, what is required of an aggrieved officer before he proceeds to court? So any public servant that wants to go to court must first exhaust all avenues provided in the public service rules and circulars for redress, and also obtain the permission of the head of the civil service of the Federation before going to court. So the aggrieved officer must first need to exhaust all avenues provided in the public service rules and circulars for redress. So, and also obtain the permission of the head of civil service, whereby he could not still get justice after exhausting all the avenues and circulars provided. So you need to now obtain the permission of the head of the civil service of the Federation before proceeding to court. Question 9. What is the purpose of transmitting communications to the head of government through the appropriate channel? A, in order that the sender may be directed properly before the communication reach the head of government. B, in order that the issue may receive prompt action. C, in order that all communications may be duly classified to the appropriate section of the head of government. And then D, in order that all communications may be duly verified as well as reported on before they reach the head of government. So question 10. What is the duration of time to handle an appeal from an aggrieved officer? A, within 3 months. B, within 6 months. C, within 12 calendar months. And D, within 7 months. Then question 11. An appeal or petition that exceeds in length pages, so what number of pages, of foolscap must also include a summary of the reasons adduced in support of the redress sought. A, is it when it exceeds in length 3 pages or 4 pages? Then C, 1 page, and then D, 2 pages. So quickly looking at the correct options. So going back to question 9 that says, what is the purpose of transmitting communications to the head of government through the appropriate channel? Of course, the purpose is that in order that all communications may be verified, so all communications may be verified as well as reported on before they reach the government. Then for question 10 that says, what is the duration of time to handle an appeal from an aggrieved officer? The duration of time is within 6 months. Within 6 months. Then 11 that says, an appeal or petition that exceeds in length if you exceed 2 pages of foolscap sheets. So once you exceed 2 pages of foolscap sheet, there must be a summary of the reasons adduced in support of the redress sought. Then question, so number 9 is D, 10B and 11D. Question 12. In line with the public service rules, when can an officer bring order outside or political influence to support his individual claims? A, when he cannot get justice after presenting the issue to the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office. B, when the director of human resource management fails to properly handle his case or present it to appropriate authority. C, at no time at all, an officer must not attempt to bring political or other outside influence to support his individual claims. And then D, when he is certain that justice will not prevail going through the appropriate channels. Question 13. Enumerate the channels for routing an appeal or petition in chronological order. So I think we'll start providing the answer for 13 before we now go to 12. So 13 says enumerate the channels for routing an appeal in chronological order. So A, we now have the routing of an appeal or petition shall follow this order. 1. Through the petitioner's immediate superior officer. Through the petitioner's immediate superior officer, that is number 1. Then 2, the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office. Then the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office now forwards the appeal or petition with his comments and recommendations to the chairman of the Federal Civil Service Commission or head of the Civil Service of the Federation in accordance with administrative instructions in force at that time. So question 12, the correct answer for the question that says, in line with public service rule, when can an officer bring order outside of political influence to support his individual claims? Of course, at no time at all. At no time at all. So an officer must not attempt to bring political or other outside influence to support his individual claims. So he must not attempt to bring anyone outside or political influence to support his claim. That is option C. So question 14. The following shall govern the submission of an appeal or petition except, so the following shall govern the submission of an appeal or petition except A, must be a handwritten appeal or petition. B, must be submitted in duplicate. C, an advance copy may be sent direct to the appropriate authority with evidence that he had submitted through the appropriate channel. And then D, one copy will be retained by the permanent secretary or head of extraministerial office. So question 15. Which of these is not true on the identity of petitioner when writing petition? A, must bear the full name, staff number, and signature of the petitioner. B, when written by a person other than the appellant, that is petitioner, the signature and address of the writer must be included. Then C, when a person submits an appeal or petition above his own signature on behalf of an illiterate, the petition shall contain a statement that he has been asked to write on behalf of the illiterate. And then D, when written by the appellant or petitioner, the address of the writer need not be included. So looking at the correct option, so for question 14 that says the following shall govern the submission of an appeal or petition except, so we have A, must be in handwritten appeal. So the correct answer should be A. So it mustn't be handwritten. It mustn't be handwritten. But other ones, let's look at the other ones. So B that says must be submitted in duplicate. Of course, appeal must be submitted in duplicate. Then C that says an advance copy may be sent direct to the appropriate authority. Of course, an advance copy may be sent with evidence that it had submitted through the appropriate channel. That is very correct. And of course, the one copy will be retained by the permanent secretary. Exactly. So the only one that is not in line is option A, which said that it must be in handwritten. It mustn't be in handwritten. Then question 15 that says which of these is not true on the identity of petitioner when writing petition? So let's look at the option A that says must bear the full name, staff number, and signature of the petition. Of course, every petition must bear the full name, the staff number, signature, and the address of the petitioner. Then B that says when written by a person other than the appellant, that is petitioner, the signature and address of the writer must be included, of course. So if, when somebody writes for another person, so the signature and the address of the writer must also be there. This is correct. Then C, when a person submits an appeal or petition above his own signature on behalf of an illiterate. So when you are writing for an illiterate, you must state, there must be a statement that will state that you were asked to write on behalf of the illiterate. So this one is also correct. Then let's look at this that say when written by the appellant or that is when written by the petitioner, the address of the writer need not be included. No, not at all. So the address, signal, everything about the writer must be in the petition. So D is the correct option. So question 16. Which of these is not a condition to disqualify or not entertain an appeal or petition? So which is not a condition to disqualify or not entertain an appeal or petition. A, if the appeal or petition is illegible or meaningless. Of course, if it's illegible or meaningless, it cannot be entertained. Okay. Then B says if the appeal or petition is on a case in which there is no pending legal action in court of law. C, that says merely repeats the substance of a previous petition without introducing new relevant matter. And D, if the appeal or petition is worded in abusive, improper, or foul language. Question 17. Within what duration is an aggrieved officer required to submit an appeal or petition after a decision on a matter had been taken? A, 6 months or less supported by valid reason for delay. B, 5 months or less supported by valid reason for delay. C, 3 months or less supported by valid reason for delay. And then D, 12 months or less supported by valid reasons for delay. So question 18, how can an appeal or petition be concluded? How can appeal or petition be concluded? A, it shall conclude by stating an evidence or arguments not previously mentioned. B, it shall conclude without summarizing or requesting definite action. C, it shall conclude by stating concisely the nature of the redress sought. And then D, it shall conclude by including personal opinion or anecdotes. So going back to the correct option, question 16 that says which of these is not a condition to disqualify or not entertain an appeal. So which of them is not a condition? So A, that says if the appeal or petition is illegible. Of course, if it is legible or meaningless, it will be disqualified, it will not be entertained. Then B, that says if the appeal or petition is on a case in which there is no pending legal action in the court. Of course, it will not be disqualified in this case. So if the case is not already having legal action in the court, it will not make it to be disqualified. It will not be disqualified. So that is option B. That is correct. Whereas option C says merely repeats the substance. Of course, if he merely repeats the substance of previous petition without introducing new ones, it will be disqualified. And D says if the appeal or petition is worded in abusive, improper, or foul, of course, it will also be disqualified. So you see that if the appeal is not having a pending case in a legal court of law, it will not be disqualified on that ground. But if the appeal is a case that's already pending in the legal court of law, it will be disqualified. But since the appeal is not having a case, it will not be disqualified. Then for question 17 that says within what duration is an aggrieved officer required to submit an appeal or petition after a decision on a matter had been taken? Of course, it's within 6 months. Within 6 months is assumed to be late, except there is a supported valid reason for the delay. Then for 18 that say how can an appeal or petition be concluded? Of course, an appeal or petition should be concluded by stating concisely the nature of the redress sought. So you conclude by stating concisely the nature of the redress sought. So question 19 says enumerate the key changes. Enumerate the key changes in the 2021 revised public service rules. So enumerate the key changes in the 2021 revised public service rules. So we have them. A, so the PMS, which now replaced the upper. Then we have introduction of 14 working days paternity leave for the male officers. Then we also have annual leave calculation now based on working days and not calendar days. Then we also have 8-year tenure system restoration. So the 8-year tenure for directors and permanent secretaries are now restored. So for director is direct as a stretch 8 years. For permanent secretaries, the first 4 years renewable for another 4 years. So making the 8 years. Then for question 5, the inclusion, another key changes is the inclusion of short-term appointments. So the inclusion of short-term appointments such as the volunteerism, the internship, talent sourcing, and sabbatical leave also included. Then for another key changes is the adaptation to modern work. Adaptation to modern work, that is, can be visual meetings, where we have visual meetings and engagements, and working from home, and that was influenced by COVID-19 pandemic. Then we also have abolition of notional promotion. So notional promotion also abolished. So then we also have the eighth change to be provision of the prohibition of employment of unpaid staff. So nothing like employing unpaid staff. So it's prohibited. And then we also have the ninth change to be inclusion of persons with disability. So inclusion of persons with disability, whereby 5% of all recruitments in the service shall be reserved for persons with disabilities. Then we have question and the 10th change, the 10th key change as inclusion of chapter on training. So there is a chapter in the civil service rule that actually deals on training. So a dedicated chapter on training has been added, highlighting the emphasis on staff development now in the revised edition. So question 20 says all of these are the aims for the review of the 2021 public service rule, except. So what are the aims? The aims for reviewing the 2021 public service rule. So A, to update the service with current trends. B, to promote transparency. C, to give room for the promotion of the right officers. D, to enhance performance. And then E, to improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the public service. So which of them is not one of the aims for reviewing the 2021 public service rule? Of course, the correct option should be to give room for the promotion of the right officers. So this is not one of the aims. So, but to update the service with current trend, of course, is one of the aims. Then to promote transparency is one of the aims. To enhance performance is one of the aims. And to improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of is one of the aims. It's not to give room for the promotion of the right officers. So that is option C. Thank you so much. We have come to the end of this particular video. And please, if you are still seeing subscribe written on your page, as we are concluding, now still look at your page, your screen, anywhere around your screen. If subscribe is still written there, please kindly hit on the subscribed button. So anywhere it is written, if you are still seeing it, kindly hit on it. As I said, the aim is for you to be getting our materials in real time. And even the previously uploaded one, if you are just coming to across our channel for the first time, so the previous one, once you subscribe, YouTube will be able to make them available to your page. When you search, you can get them. And then also, if you and also the new ones that we upload after now, you'll be able to get them. That is essence of subscribing, and you are not paying a dime for it. It's free of charge. This material, we took time to make it free of charge. Our aim is that you pass your examination, your public service rule examination. So quickly, we also like you to give us a thumb up if you find this material value, if it's of value to you. So appreciate us by giving us a thumb up, like us, and we'll be glad to have your comments, so that if there's areas we need to adjust, so your comments is very, very valued to us. And above all, you share to your friends, to your colleagues. So if the material is of value to you, it will also be of value to your friends and colleagues. Let them also benefit from it. So what is our next topic? In our next topic, we shall be looking at allowances as contained in the public service rule. So thank you. My name remains Chendo Ebele. So Chendo Ebele remains my name. I appreciate you for staying this far. I'll see you again in my next episode, and God bless you. Wish you success in your examination. Thank you.